Hey guys, welcome back to the Bucket Think Tank. So here we are, we're about to do a ranking video on the Disney live action remakes because, well, we're at a bit of a lull until the next ones come out. We just finished with Cruella, and after her we have something along the lines of Pinocchio, Snow White, Little Mermaid at some point. I think something else is coming out too. But looking at what we have now, I think I've been a bit overly critical. I stand by pretty much everything I've said about these movies. Let's be clear. We're not walking anything back. We might be a bit nicer, choose our words be a bit more fair, try to divorce ourselves from how we feel about it. But it should be noted, and now this is possibly the nice thing I'm going to say about this, there is some credit that should be given to them for doing this. Because even though it is in some ways a blatant cash grab, I'd like to think that we have a lot of people who just want to explore their classic stories, the stories that they grew up with. Granted, Disney's fairy tales, for the most part, are just adaptations of the Grimm fairy tales, so there's an issue there. But let's be honest, for the most part, a lot of the stories that these Disney movies are based off of don't get much traction anyway. Like Disney has sort of cemented themselves as this is the definitive version. This is the mainstream version. Yeah, this is a Grimm fairy tale thing, sure. Like no one really goes back and looks up the Legend of Kimba unless to say, hey, Disney kind of ripped this off. That's kind of it. No one goes, well, Kimba's a masterpiece. No. No one says anything nice about Kimba except in regards to the fact that it's Disney ripped it off. That's kind of it. There's nothing else to be said about it. And when I think of, there are scenes from these movies that I do like, and I think there's a good idea presented here. Like, look at something, say, Maleficent. Maleficent said the quiet part out loud, alright? That, in Sleeping Beauty, the best character really is Maleficent. It's kind of it. So let's just sort of try to expand on that. This is sort of like a prequel remake to it. That one part explained why Maleficent is the way she is, or at least why this Maleficent is the way she is, and then expanded on her more. The problem is, though, in this attempts to do this, it sort of watered down the rest of the story. And you see something that felt more like a passion project, at least a fun project like Aladdin, and something that tried to be a bit more true to the source material like The Jungle Book, and then some that tried to improve on their failed attempts like Cruella's a better attempt at Maleficent. Then of course you have something like The Lion King, and you're like, we shouldn't have done this. And that one is because it's just riding on the fact that it's a Lion King. That's kind of it. It doesn't really take advantage of anything that it has to offer, except maybe let's change the art style of it. And granted, that's a drastic change, but still, it's kind of frustrating because it doesn't feel like there's a real creative drive behind this that unites them all together outside of let's retell these stories with some changes, and we don't quite agree on what these changes are. But yeah, we've rambled off a bit. This is probably because in the original recording we did, there's a bunch of stuff that didn't just come out. Like all of a sudden there was no sound, it skipped ahead. We checked it, and hopefully this part here is fine. So yeah, I will leave you all to this weird attempt at another battle with OBS. Let's just get right into it. All right, so Maleficent. This is also going to count the sequel to be easier for us. So Maleficent is on the surface, like as an idea, I would say it's an A. As an idea. Because it's saying the quiet part out loud. Alright, what was the most memorable part of Sleeping Beauty? It was Maleficent. She was the pinnacle of the beginning of the school of Disney villainy, of the showman. The idea that you come in and you're the master of your own domain. Evil's not just something you do. This is who you are. You wake up ready to raise some hell. Alright? In the context of that original movie, she is not invited to a party we all know she wouldn't have gone to anyway. And she's like, you know what? I'm gonna kill that baby. Just because I can. Which comes in like, nobility, gentry, and the rabble. That's it. It's great. And again, she carried that movie. So, to make a story about her is sort of kind of obvious, but this story here just doesn't. Like, again, I think the big thing about this movie is sort of the rape allegory, and it doesn't really go anywhere with that. She sort of becomes a terrible person because of it, and she sort of adopts her abuser's child because she went off and killed them. It's weird, and the sequel doesn't help. It makes Maleficent more important. It's like they're trying to went for a fallen hero angle here, but didn't quite know how to stick the landing, and they didn't know how to make her more interesting without dumbing down everyone else. I think the story could have been really good. We could have expanded on things. We could have expanded on King Stefan's and hers relationship. King Stefan's also a non-entity after the said incident, and it's kind of sad. So I'm gonna put this at a C. Honestly, at a C. I think that's fair. Cinderella. Now, Cinderella is, to me, Lily James carries that movie. She just does. Helena Bonham, is Helena Bonham Carter in this one? Yeah, she is. I think she does an all right job, but this movie's mostly forgettable, and it's sad because when you think about Maleficent and Cinderella, they were part of the Disney Golden Age. They came, and Cinderella itself sort of bailed the company out. So it's a bit sad to see this sort of be all right, and I think that's the worst part. It's just all right. And to me, an all right is a B. There's not much to talk about Cinderella. We already went into the fact that its original does a better job of sort of showing why she still stays there. Where this one, by showing that she has options if she should leave, it just sort of raises more questions as to why she's staying. It just doesn't work. Just doesn't work for me. Just doesn't. Pete's Dragon is the actual D. It's an actual D. Pete's Dragon is just absolutely forgettable. And to be fair, the original Pete's Dragon's kind of forgettable too. I think it's one of those you had to be there movies. Like, if you weren't there when the original Pete's Dragon came out the first time, and it didn't sort of bond with you, it just sort of goes out the window. This Pete's Dragon feels like it was something that should have been made in the 90s. It's like, this is the town that forgot how to laugh, and this is the boy and his dragon that taught them how again. That's sort of what it feels like. But it doesn't go, like, remember Mighty Joe Young? It feels like Mighty Joe Young. Or like Clifford the Big Red Dog. Like, it feels like that sort of story. And one of the coolest things about the original Pete's Dragon was that, well, at least the Disney Pete's Dragon, was that you got the impression that Pete, like the dragon came around, I forget his name, that he was there like, I'm here to guide and help lost children until they, find a place where they belong. It's like a happier version of the Soul Piper from Inuyasha, where it's sort of like, hey, this is, well, Soul Piper's not just in Inuyasha, but you get the gist of it. Like, hey, I'm here to help this kid out until he's ready to go to heaven. They don't act right, I will drag them to hell with my eyes open. That's kind of it. And, like, nothing in Pete's Dragon feels connected. That's sort of my problem with it. Like, if you took, like, none of it feels like it was unique or special, like, any of the characters were connected to each other. It's just kind of dull that way. Next, and I think I'm definitely out of order. I've forgotten the order of this. I'm sorry. The Jungle Book, I will say it, is... I'm gonna say it. Out of this particular ranking, out of these particular movies, it might go down later, but it's an S. It's an S. It's the best of the bunch, in my opinion, because it does a good job of playing around with the original material and expanding on it, trying to the original material, that being, of course, Disney's actual Jungle Book, and then adding stuff like the Law of the Jungle, which was part of Kipling's original book. I felt was really great. It's telling an interesting story. But also, like Disney's Jungle Book, Mowgli is still the least interesting part of the story. Whether it be Baloo, Bagheera, Akela in this case, even Christopher Walken as Louie, Ooby-Doo, I want to be like you, is still more of a standout than Mowgli. And it's a bit sad they never really tried to make Mowgli an endearing character in these. Or at least, Walt tried, but to Walt's defense in this, Walt, and I'll down this hill, going by a lot of his other works in Disney, he doesn't really care about main characters. Like, he doesn't. The side characters, they carry it. They carry the music, they carry the comedy, they carry everything else. The main character's sort of there for all the other characters to have like a set backdrop. Like, hey, there's Snow White. Alright, now we have a reason to have 7 men rock this movie by leaving their mind. And then, of course, when they clean and how they interact with Cinderella, Jack and Gus and all the other mice, and Bruno and how they interact with Cinderella is way more fun. Dumbo is a silent character, barely says a word. There's some credit to his expressions, but it's mostly Timothy, those terrible elephants, those terrible clowns. They really help tell the story of Dumbo. So, yeah, that sort of works out. Beauty and the Beast, on my personal ranking, this is an F. This is an F. But But if I were to divorce myself a bit from how I feel, because this is the first movie that felt like an attack on my childhood. I love Beauty and the Beast so much. It really did feel like an artistic moment when I saw it to me. Like, this is like, I love the idea of a great show. And when I look at Lumiere and putting on Be Our Guest, and, you know, the whole little town and Bonjour, and Beauty and the Beast, to me, it's peak Disney in a lot of ways. So, yeah, and Belle is the worst part of that live action movie. So, if I took Belle out of it, I think it actually moves up a bit to a C. It's not a D. I'm trying to be nice. I'm trying to be nice to that. But I just don't. I just don't. I just don't. Dumbo, the ninth wonder of the world. Dumbo, if you look at the behind the scenes stuff as to how they got to Dumbo, and I don't know why they decided to put Tim Burton in on this. I don't. I don't even remember really seeing Helena Bonham Carter's in this. I think Sacha Baron Cohen was there, and Johnny Depp wasn't. Well, yeah, Johnny Depp was going through some stuff. But still, like, why? If you're going to have Tim Burton direct a movie he probably shouldn't be directing, why this? There were no crows. Like, I don't care if anyone says the crows are racist. I personally don't think they are. Yeah, I get one of them named Jim Crow, but whatever. To be fair, those are black stereotypes, and stereotypes exist for a reason. And also, let's point out the crows were, like, the best adults there. They didn't make fun of Dumbo. They made fun of the idea that an elephant could fly, because that is ridiculous. The only reason we believe it is because, well, it's, like, built up in the movie. Like, at some point, Dumbo is going to fly. But that's kind of it. And then when Timothy the Mouse, you know, lets them know what Dumbo's gone through, like, yeah, we're sorry. We're going to help you out. That's kind of it. I think it's an all-right movie. It could be better. I think that's a B in this case. Same thing with Cinderella. Lady and the Tramp is pure innocence. And I think it does the best job of adapting the work into live action. Well, live action. What I liked about it is that I think it was very true to the original Lady and the Tramp. It's a very sweet, beautiful, innocent story, and I think the animals do a great job. Well, you know, whether real or not, doesn't matter. I think they do a great job of conveying that innocence and whatnot. I do get the feeling that Tramp does want to protect Lady. I get the feeling that Lady has a sort of strength in her that she hasn't quite realized yet. And the two of them sort of bond over the stuff they added, namely Tramp's history, which is more explored here, I think did him a great service. I still say this should have been the first live-action remake. They should have took a deep breath and said, you know what, this is what we're doing, let's go with it, and, you know, whatever happens, happens. And I think that would have, at least endeared me more to the live-action idea. To be let down later with stuff like Maleficent. You notice we're sort of dancing around the subject here. Aladdin, you know, despite what madness has possessed Will Smith lately, his portrayal as the genie is all right, all things considered. He was never going to top Robin Williams. It was just impossible. It was unfair to expect him to. And I didn't expect him to. He was never going to be as funny as Robin Williams because he can't be Robin Williams funny. People have tried and failed. Every imitator you get pretty much just says stuff Robin Williams already said. All right, that is not a proper imitation of Robin Williams. To be Robin Williams, you would have to say stuff Robin Williams would say, but he hasn't said it already. That's kind of the trick there. I mean, you have people that can look like Robin Williams, but no. When I think of Robin, that's a whole other thing. But when Will Smith's sort of allowed to do something like himself, like when he starts off with "Never Had a Friend Like Me," you know, here I go. Dun, I think that's really great. In that scene when they do Prince Ali, and he's like, "We're waiting for you. Come on, you can do it." That is great. That is sort of what makes Aladdin as a movie work. In that remake was like, we are never really going to top the original. All right, we just can't. We don't even have Gilbert Gottfried. All right, we don't at all. And they just said, like, you know what, let's just go in there, have fun, be a little more culturally accurate, and have fun with it. And a lot of these characters were just fun. The real weakness of Aladdin is Aladdin. Like, he's just so bland. Actually, Aladdin and Jasmine are kind of the worst parts of this movie. They just are. Actually, yeah. The problem with Aladdin is that it misses the point of being trapped. It doesn't tell the story the way I think it wants to, or it should. But that's just me. But if I'm going to be honest, it's a B. It's a B. It could be an A. It could be an A. But I think there was some artistic choices that really sort of knocked it down. I think it gets the colors right. I think it gets the character motivations right, but really doesn't help Aladdin stand out as a character. Once again, Aladdin is overshadowed by Genie, but he's also shadowed by possibly the least emotionally invested version of the Genie. Um, Lion King is a D. It is a big, fat, stinky D. It is, I think, in my mind, the most. It's the most honest of live action ones. Like, if we just want to cash in on nostalgia, let's just put the Lion King out there. Let's put James Earl Jones back as Mufasa, and just roll with that. Do very little to expand the story. That was kind of it. And with the whole CG trying to make them look more real, it doesn't quite work. Because the problem is they're too distracting from the actors' performances. And at the same time, Seth Rogen as Pumbaa would have been funny 8 years ago. Seth Rogen becomes less funny the further he goes down the line. That's just my opinion on it. He's never been more funny than he was as Mantis in Kung Fu Panda. It's kind of it in my mind. Beyonce was a total waste of time. Beyonce's casting in this was the same thing as Michael Jackson's casting in The Wiz. If you're not going to give them a chance to be themselves, or at least add something special that only they can add to it, outside of a little bit of a song, a little bit of singing, there's no point to it. You put Beyonce in here because her name draws people, but it's the Lion King. You're already going to draw people, so stop it. Let's also just point this out. Beyonce is not an actress. All right, she's a character who excels at playing herself. Now, some actors can do this. Some people can have made careers out of playing themselves. All right, they just do. Beyonce is not one of them. Tom Hanks excels at playing himself. All right, Bill Cosby thought he could play the same character in everything he's ever done, and guess what? His movies have never worked. Never worked. Every iteration of the Cosby Show is like the only place where he kind of works. That's kind of it. Mulan is, I think Mulan was sort of torn between being a very sort of honest approach to girl power and trying to appease China. And because of that, the movie kind of suffers. It's mostly forgettable. I think that's the biggest problem. To me, in the past couple of years, I think the best representation for Asians in film has been Turning Red. That's kind of it. Mulan just feels like a bland kung fu movie that doesn't want to admit it's a bland kung fu movie. It wants to be about something. It's not a D, though, because I think on a production standpoint it does a very good job. But overall, no, it's a C. It's a C. Like, if I'm being 100% honest, I think it works best as a C. It didn't want to commit to anything that made Mulan Mulan. I think that's the problem. That moment, I think. And I used to hate Reflection. I used to just hate that song because to me it stopped the movie. It stopped the energy. Because I was a kid, I liked to move around. That's a lie. I've never liked to move around. But I like something that I want to sing and move around a bit. I'll Make a Man Out of You was that song for me. But, Mulan failing her matchmaker thing is important because she's failing at something that everyone else around her is getting like that. And I think we've all been there, where everyone else can get something that we're not getting. It just doesn't stick with us, and we feel really bad going home after that huge failure. And a lot of it is Mulan sort of getting her confidence in not just herself, but the person she sees in the mirror. She starts to like herself more. And I think people, like with Cinderella and wanting that whole, that she just wanted a prince thing, which she didn't want, I think that's overshadowed as well. Because Mulan didn't go out there to prove that she could do anything a man can do. That's the farthest thing from her mind. Mulan actually has no problem with the traditions of her culture. She just wishes she was better at fitting in with them. That's kind of it. And this one here gives her the confidence that she related with. That's why Mulan 2 kind of works and kind of doesn't work. When she says an arranged marriage is wrong, like, no, you were literally going to get an arranged marriage. You didn't want to fail at it. That's kind of it. Yeah, that's it. Lastly is Cruella. So I am going to be a bit out there. I'm going to give Cruella an A. Cruella was everything Maleficent wanted to be. Actually, Cruella's B. But it's everything Maleficent wants to be. And it just... like, it's not as over the top with Maleficent, which is weird because Cruella is over the top. It is. I mean, this is based off of a woman who wanted to murder puppies to make a coat. By default, you have to go over the top. Using the fashion industry, I think, helped with that. Helped sort of give her the avenue that the character needed to really be out there. And by not making something as drastic and as sort of easy to miss sight of, then the rape allegory, I think, works because it's a family vendetta. So even then, even if aren't a woman, aren't a girl, you can sort of understand. Hey, if someone killed my mom, yeah, on site, on site. Like I will join on this whole vendetta to get revenge. I'm gonna Count of Monte Cristo this, and go from there. That is where we go. Again, my real critique with this movie is that I don't quite feel like Cruella is entirely, or Stella is really invested in what it's doing to her. She just gets more validation that she's right, which is, I think, another problem that Maleficent had. You don't have to constantly keep, emboldening your character to go down a chaotic path. The fact that Horace and Jasper are sort of there, and they feel like in the animated ones and other ones, you feel like Horace and Jasper might be relatively new. They aren't as important to Stella's life. But here in this movie, they're her brothers effectively, and it's a bit sad when you see how, like, if you were to connect this one to the animated one, you would say that Cruella has fallen so far. Actually, even into the live action one, she's fallen so far from that character, and I don't think that's the intention. I think like Maleficent's trying to be its own thing, but you can't help but make that connection, and I think it's fascinating a bit. It's a bit more fascinating that way. But anyway, that is my whole tier ranking of this. I think what really strikes me as I was thinking about this was that scene from Ratatouille when they say the average piece of drivel is, what was it, more significant than our critique dictates it so. Something along those lines. I haven't listened to it in a while, but I couldn't help but think of that. And I'll tip my hat a bit to the people that really thought that this was going to be something, that thought they could reinvent this story a bit and tell maybe a new and unique story. I remember when I talked about Beauty and the Beast, and I felt like the greatest success was sort of the design of the Beast and how he worked, but I also remember the tragedy when people talked about Belle. Belle became sort of the girl she inspired, not the one who inspired girls, and I think that was the problem with her character. Pete's dragon doesn't quite know what it wants to do with the dragon and the people. The Lion King wants to just realize, hey, the Lion King was our biggest success at that time. Let's just throw it out there, but, change it a bit. But there's always something cool, like Scar's new take on Be Prepared is, I think, really great and should be worth considering. Scarlett Johansson as Kaa trying to entice me, Mowgli, was a very interesting idea. And the law adding things from Kipling's original book, which I think should have been the point of these remakes in a lot of ways, was to try to merge the original material and the remake in a bit more, in a happier marriage, if possible. I'm not quite sure it does that in certain ways. Yeah, that's kind of it. It's weird to me that Cinderella was such a middle-of-the-road movie when you think about it. And it concerns me with something like Snow White and Pinocchio. Dumbo, Cinderella, Snow White, Pinocchio. These are movies that were pretty close to Walt. The Jungle Book was the last movie Walt worked on before he died. Like, I believe he died before it actually hit theaters. Lady and the Tramp feels like something he would do as well. I think there was like a rumor that he had like a notebook, and there was a bunch of other stuff, like Aladdin was one of those things, and I don't know. We're rambling at this point. So anyway, with that in mind, if you're new to the Bucket Think, if you like, comment, share, subscribe, check out some other videos, and I'll catch you all later. This is Bucket Think signing off. Thanks for watching. As always, may your fandom serve you well.